Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. You can find blogs and my books there. Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children, and Raised by These Wolves, Volume 2, Child Trafficking Through Foster Care and Court Systems, which will be out mid-July of 2024. And feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. I have a brand new guest on. I'm happy to have Kai Tristan Rivera on. He turned 21 in April. He works in the food system. He's new to the adult world, so he's trying to figure out his life. But currently, he spends most of his time in New York and he goes between New Jersey and Pennsylvania. He's a victim of child sexual abuse and molestation by his stepfather. It has taken him years to realize and accept what happened to him and come forward on a public platform now because state police did nothing, and now the child molester has full custody of his brothers. Everyone needs to know the severity of family court corruption and its cover up of child abuse. And I welcome you, Kai. And where are you at with all of this now?
To start with, internally, I've been struggling. Um, it's really hard just to do anything. For instance, like since my brothers are not only removed from my life, but they're also stuck with, my sexual abuser is just ridiculous. Like I do struggle with, depression. It's not easy, like just talking to anybody really. Like
Mhm,
even talking to my own family and my own mother
mhm.
and my even my own father, like it's I don't know. Like but in terms of where I physically am, like I do my best to try to stay in shape and, you know, not lose myself
Mhm.
in terms of bad habits and like wasting my time. Hope
So,
that answers.
so working out, does that help with the depression?
Not necessarily, it's just
Hmm.
maintenance.
Because people say, well, with anxiety and depression, it helps if you do a workout or yoga, anything like that. And so you're telling me it just doesn't really help.
Well, I don't suffer from anxiety. I'm not anxious, but for me, working out is like just regular maintenance, like taking out the trash and cleaning. Because I don't like feeling like my body isn't ready for even just getting up and having to suddenly jog,
Mhm.
having to pick up something. So,
Yeah, that is a tough situation to be in. And when did the last time you talk to your brothers? I don't want to mention their names, but
it's for sure over a year. I think uh, it's been about like 400. It was definitely for my birthday last year, so I think it's like over 400 days.
mm, well, they must miss you too. Are they are they teens?
No, my youngest brother having turned he turned 9 in May 26th, and the middle child Zane had turned 11.
Mm,
He'll be turning 12 December 10th.
mhm. That's too bad. That's just, I just feel so bad. The state police, they're not doing anything to help with this situation.
No, not at all. I've even reached out. I've done my best in terms of like reaching back out to a state officer named Justin Leary, and just no updates. Like I would ask for updates. Like, hey, is there anything going on? I would never get a response back, ever. And that was the guy that was initially handling
Hmm.
my request to press charges against Jeff Reichel.
Hmm. So you went through family court through this as well?
No, but I currently am trying to pursue legal action through a private agency.
So I'm sure people are wondering, when all this happened and you all were separated, how did he get these kids? He,
So, for one, when I was growing up, Jeff would always try to like show off how well he would think he was a cool person, but like the way he would try to show off would be like I have a lot of friends um like therapists. I have friends that are lawyers. Um, I even have friends that are judges.
mm,
Um, I've experienced I've experienced I've experienced the power of having his friend be a judge, and I've experienced the power of him having a therapist as a friend as well. So, um, one minor thing, when I was in the eighth grade, like I was late to school, like I was constantly tardy, and if your child is reaches a certain amount of tardies, late to school, it's gonna strike legal action. And
mhm.
one of the whom which was his friend completely waived any sort of, I guess it would be I think a parent would be fine for this, but
Mhm.
I sat in a conference room with Reichel and this judge, and it just completely went away. And then another time when I was initially dealing with like my depression from when Jeff had initially started molesting me and sexually abusing me, he coerced my mother to see one of his friends, whom which is a therapist, and I was forced to go. And I was forced to sit in the same room with Jeff. Like
Mhm.
Jeff went in the room. Like I didn't even want to go to therapy at all, but like I prefer to have like nobody else in the room, and like Jeff would not be anywhere else but in the room with me.
So, so your mother was there as well, and he was kind of just there to oversee what was being said.
From what I remember, I barely spoke.
Hmm.
I remember
Well, and how could you? Because if he's there, you would be afraid to say anything because then you have to go back home with this person.
exactly. I had no I really had no energy to like, even with the therapist right there, I'm like, this isn't gonna work anyways because he's friends, and
Mhm.
even if I were to somehow get a new therapist, like it would just be another one of his friends somehow.
Hmm.
And he constantly put that pressure on my mother and I, like, hey, I got friends everywhere, like the president of a board, president of maybe a school principal, like whatever, powerful position, like I've got a friend there.
Hmm. I can relate to that as I had an issue with the stepmother, and she stated, I have a lot of friends in the court. I know a lot of people in the courthouse, and I'm friends with all the judges. That's what she told me. And I understand that it's after hearing that, you feel helpless.
Yeah. Especially now, like especially now, like my mom has been constantly stuck in this sort of cycle where like his friends are like his lawyers, and like my little brother's lawyers are also Michael's friends as well. So along with that, it doesn't help that, you know, these my little brother's lawyers have sabotaged these situations in family court and essentially aided Jeff in receiving full custody.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like I don't I don't understand how like Pennsylvania can be, or at least the court system could be this corrupt. It's ridiculous because I've been sexually abused since I moved to Pennsylvania, and I'm sure well, I know for sure because my middle child, my middle brother, he said last year, like before him and I had like complete like a complete cutoff of communication. Like ever like right before him and I were completely cut off. Like Zane had admitted like Reichel was sexually abusing him as well. And I could imagine my brothers are still going through the same cycle of being sexually abused and constantly under pressure.
So family court was in process like about 2 years ago, 1 to 2 years ago,
In terms of
going
like
through the the family court system. I'm sorry.
I think it was like 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yes. Um, yeah, because I remember when I had graduated, my mom had told me like she wanted a divorce. Um, my stepfather, um, and then that when that had happened, that was when I wanted to pursue legal action. So
Hmm.
it's been years.
So when she was going through family court with your little brothers, did she call you as a witness and they just wouldn't let you speak?
Um, I haven't been called as a witness,
Hmm.
so I guess I just won't be allowed to speak at all.
But you're reporting this to the state police and they're not doing anything.
Correct.
See, that's just terrible because have you gone to CPS, Child Protective Services,
Mhm.
and they're
Yes,
not doing.
yep. They went into Jeff Reckel's home, and essentially the same thing with me being with my therapist with Reichel in the room. They were interviewing my little brothers with Reichel in the room. So Child Protective Services were in the living room of Reichel's house, and
Oh, they should know better than that.
I guess they don't
Oh,
because they I believe they've gone over multiple times, but overall Reichel was just present the whole time. And I mean, their investigation concluded with like kids are fine, and they appear they believe that there's no need to move the kids out the house. But I'm telling you right now, like if they were to have interviewed the kids out, like with Jeff away,
mm-hmm.
they would have they would have had they would have spoken the truth. They would have let them know like we want to leave him. We hate him. We want to move in with mom. We
Mm-hmm.
don't like living with him.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You
So
know, you're fine. How is your mother doing through all this?
um I mean my mom ever since I was a kid would never express how she really feels. But um I know for a fact this is like the worst thing she's ever experienced. Like divorcing
Mhm.
the child molester of her children, and not only that, but like struggling just just even maintain like ma even maintain keeping um a roof over her head, and trying to be there for my brothers. But like I don't know, I don't know. My mom really doesn't really express it, but I know for a fact this is like the most difficult thing ever.
Mhm. And she doesn't get to see them either.
Um, no, she doesn't. No, she doesn't. I think she may have seen the middle child when he was released out of it was this Devereux Hospital, and I think it was somewhere near Philadelphia. But when Zane was released, like I think she had seen him maybe one time,
Mm.
and that was prior to December of 2023, or maybe that month.
Yeah, what these courts are doing to families. And I'm sure your mother, did she have a lawyer or no?
Um, I mean, definitely not now, but she went through three different lawyers,
Oh,
and like I want to point out, like when children and youth came through to like interview, um, to see how my brothers are doing, like I'm very sure like Riker was friends with
mm.
multiple professionals that maybe were in the house, but overall like had control over that situation in terms of my brothers.
See, the sad part that people don't know about family court and these players is that they're all in the same sandbox playing together and they all know each other. And that was what my problem as well. And this is a serious case of child abuse, and even the state police won't help you.
Yeah. I don't understand why I haven't been called as a witness. Like this has been going on for about 3 years. And like I graduated 3 years ago. And this case has been going on for the same amount of time.
Mhm.
And my mom has asked me to be a witness for July 10th. And I I mean my mom has done whatever she could to like try to convince me to be a witness, but I'm convinced, I'm personally convinced like there's no point in going because I if there wasn't any sort of corruption going on, we wouldn't be here. 3 years later, two young boys are stuck with the pedophile,
Mhm.
and now I'm suddenly the person that initiated the child protective services on Reichel himself. Now um I'm suddenly being called as a witness, and no, I'd rather sit here and talk about it online and try to gain some real traction and some real influence here because the thing is like Jeff Jeff is certainly does have his friends in this legal world, but like on a real ground level,
Mhm.
real people, like he nobody really likes
Mhm.
him. Reichel was when I was in high school in Pennsylvania, Reichel was um he already had an influence on on me in terms of like control, but
Mhm.
he wasn't to be my guidance counselor, but he was still a guidance counselor in the exact same school as me, right? And um, you know, clearly as a male, being molested by another male, that's not only a pedophile, but that's clearly homosexual. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, and I mean all of my friends in high school was like, he's married to your mom. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody was convinced he was gay, a homosexual man. Everybody. You can ask anybody,
Mm-hmm.
even the that work there. They'll be like, "There's no way he's married to a woman." Especially this kid in our classroom. There's no way he's married to that person's mom. But yeah, he there's nothing. He I've never ever in my life thought I would see a comic book villain be in taken out of like off the page and put in real life.
Mm-hmm.
He's pure evil. He, Marianne, if you and him were had met and you guys had a few conversations throughout 1 month, okay, he's gonna pretend to be your friend. He's gonna be pretend to have real interest
Mm-hmm.
in terms of support or advice, but some way somehow you have um some sort of value to him, and then he's gonna sort of manipulate you into into going down the wrong path, and then he's
Mm-hmm.
going to take that, and it's going to somehow benefit him. And then on top of that, he's just going to trash talk. For instance, Zayn, his God family, has always been close to not only myself but to my mother because they're close friends since prior to my birth. And every single time that this God family would hang out with Reichel, my mother and I, like after we're done hanging out, like Riker would proceed to just trash talk them and completely completely disrespect them. And
Mm-hmm.
then next week we'll hang out again. It's gonna be completely nice, completely acting like they're best of friends.
Mm-hmm.
He does this to everybody. He even did this to me, to my own mother. He would pretend to be nice to me and whatnot. And then he would tell my mom, he would literally tell my mom I'm retarded, that I belong in I forgot the term, like essentially these special ed classes. Like he would do his best to persuade my mother to put me in special ed classes. Like I've probably been evaluated by some sort of specialist about 5 times between 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 middle school and high school, probably 5 times. And that was all because of him persistently um just nagging my mom to just I don't know. Maybe it was to try and bait my mom into looking the other direction while he was sexually abusing me. But like overall, there's something there
Yeah.
there's something completely corrupted inside of his soul.
Most definitely a personality disorder for sure. Has he ever gone through any psychological evaluations? Probably not.
Yeah. So one thing about this comic book villain personality he has, like he's completely dirty. Like when I had moved in with him, he was close friends to the president of the community we lived in. And this is Winona Lakes. Um, and within a short amount of time, Jeff had not only completely persuaded this president, I think his name was um, Bob or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very regular name, but it was, he completely persuaded this guy. Like he had his back, and that he was completely there to support him. And within a very short amount of time. I couldn't tell you how quick it was, but like he completely snaked this guy and completely removed him out of his job. And not only that, he he literally convinced the entire community we lived in to not only hate him, but to not trust him, and that he was the sole source of all community issues.
Mm-hmm. So he ran a smear campaign on that guy.
And that's not the only person too. That's not the only person too. He's been doing the same thing to my mother and the community too. Um, as I said before, he pretends to be your friend, and he's done this with however many people in this Winona Lakes community in Pennsylvania, Stroudsburg, and he's done whatever he could to try to get all these people to believe my mom is bad, to
Mm.
believe my mom. As a matter of fact, he's been pushing this sort of mental disorder on not only these people in the community, but he's also been pursuing this via court.
Mhm.
And the thing about my mom is she doesn't have any of these disorders, right? And if I'm telling you right now, if my mom were to be evaluated to be tested, she wouldn't come up with any sort of like crazy, bizarre, any of these lies he's been trying to push on these people. And he only started doing this because my mom divorced him. And mind you, in the first place, my mom wasn't even trying to have like a custody battle. Like she
Right.
was just trying to have a very fair divorce and essentially like keep Jeff in my brother's lives. And overall, he he completely flipped the switch on her. He's like, "No, I'm not doing any of this. I'm gonna just try to bury you for no reason." I'm not saying he said this, but this is his actions. I'm just
Mm-mm.
gonna bury Linda, and I'm going to do whatever I can to completely tarnish her, and make it look like you're the bad guy, and I'm gonna pretend to be this poor husband
Mhm.
that's divorced by a woman. Like, no, he's I don't look. I'm telling you right now, as a kid, don't get me wrong, I had the advantage of living with him, so I knew never to believe and never to trust him. But like, even as an outsider, like you can always feel if you were to have a conversation with Rico, like you can't really trust him. Like you don't really like him. Like there's something wrong, something off.
Mhm.
And anybody that believes any of this, whatever lies he's making up, any lies that he's made up about my mom, like there's no way anybody can.
Perpetual liars are very good at this. They're very good at the court system. I've seen it in motion, and the
Yeah,
attorneys are just as bad.
this guy's talented.
Right.
It's
Oh,
as
definitely.
if he for this, like a kid raised to play sports all his life. Is this is literally Reichel's profession.
Mhm.
He's been bred and raised and grown up to be this sort of manipulator that's going to take advantage of people and essentially tarnish their name, try to completely throw dirt all over their name. He's completely about disrespecting others and um like stepping on one person, to put himself up for somebody else.
Oh, definitely. And he's calling your mother crazy, I bet.
Yeah.
That's a common tactic. And through the courts, did he order her to have a psychological evaluation?
There wasn't no order, but he's been sort of well, he's been pushing this sort of like he's made this up, right? But he doesn't have any no evidence and no foundation, right? So like he's telling them like she's crazy, she's nuts, but she there she hasn't I know for a fact my mom hasn't been um been evaluated, and that's because she doesn't need to be. But
Right.
regardless, I don't really know if the court is ever gonna actually have my mom go see what would it be, a psychologist? Like I don't know if they're my I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. But regardless, even if it does, it'll work out in my mom's favor because the court will literally see that there's nothing wrong with my mom. That
Right.
this is completely made up. And
Right.
this is just this sort of tactic.
Well, you know what? I had a psychological evaluation and it was golden. Even the psychologist showed up in court for me. I was shocked he even did that. And he totally shut the opposition down, but they were all in bed together that they still um were still calling me crazy despite Oh, and another thing, at the end of his psychological evaluation, he wrote that the father's motives need to be investigated. And they didn't address that either. In
Hmm.
So it's all in who you know. It's really, it plagues the family court so much so it should be abolished. And I think the case would go better if there was a jury.
Right. And I think they also saw a psychologist. I believe it was the one I had told you about. Um, um, yeah, I wrote a letter to you, right?
Mhm.
So, but overall, yeah, having friends. I mean, well, no matter what, having friends is always going to help you. But like in the legal system, like the court system, like there's no room for that because that's just complete corruption, and it just makes an unfair fight for anybody. And that's not how court is supposed to be.
No.
Court is supposed to be a fair fight, even for for someone who literally is guilty for what they've done. It should still be a fair fight.
Hmm.
And you can commit crimes, and your friends can still bail you out. It
Hmm.
is it's not fair to anybody,
No,
uh, without a doubt.
they haven't. Okay, so then you go to court on July 10th. What's going to happen there? What's the purpose of that?
Well, I mean, the purpose of that would be to try to help my mom get my brothers back because I don't know. You just can't steal somebody's kids and get away with it.
Right.
No, like, especially like Zane is not Reichel's blood at all. Like the backstory to that is the middle child is not Reichel's sperm, not Reichel's blood, not his descendant whatsoever. Like my
Hmm.
mother had Zane with somebody else. And then when we moved out to Pennsylvania, after some time of Reichel and my mother dating, Reichel became the legal parent. So my mom essentially signed his permitted to Reichel becoming the legal father. And but overall, you just can't steal two kids and act like not act, but think you're gonna get away with it because for one, it's illegal, and on top of that, like there's no, it's just bad faith. It's bad faith, and I need to be there to support my mom, and I also need to be there to help support my brothers too because they're kids, and just imagine if you yourself was stuck in the same house as your
Mm.
family child molester. You're stuck there for from when you're 9 years old, and it's probably forever, to be honest, because you're never gonna leave because the damn predator has convinced you that you need to stay in the same house and that you never ever gonna leave because you don't want to leave, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
yeah, regardless, you just can't stay. You just can't abandon kids like this.
Right. And the kids, I'm sure, have been coached to say what they're going to say when they're sequestered with the judge. Hopefully they'll speak the truth. Um, One of mine spoke the truth and they just twisted his words. It was just, and I have no faith in the justice system. But who knows? Maybe on July 10th, your mother will get full custody, which I hope she does.
On July 10th, well, there's a court date for July 10th because Jeff Reichel wants to hold my mother Linda in contempt. He wants to hold her in contempt and try to take advantage of this because he knows my mom is poor. My
Hmm.
mom works for minimum wage in Pennsylvania. He's gonna try to hold her in contempt because she's poor, and he's just gonna try to run away with the kids at this point.
So he has her paying child support?
I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised though because he's got a lot of leverage.
Because
But
if he's holding her in contempt, so he's holding her in contempt, um, but is it I wonder if it's for child support.
I'm sure I mean, he makes a lot of money. And on top of that, knowing my mom works for minimum wage and how do I say, like when you know you're guilty of something, right?
Right.
You want to completely remove all the factors and the evidence against you. So nobody's ever going to catch you, right?
Mhm.
So in Reichel's case, he, his 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 knife with the fingerprints on is my mom,
Mhm.
and what I'm trying to do is just completely get rid of this knife.
Mhm.
And the only way to do that is to, in my mom's situation, take all her money. Because if you're working for minimum wage, you're not making more than 40, probably not more than 35,000 in the state of Pennsylvania, right?
If
So,
that.
right. And on top of that, like if if you have less than what you're making in Pennsylvania, I'd imagine child support would take a lot of money. And I'd imagine my mom would probably be left with maybe 19,000. So imagine trying to live off of 19,000 as a grown woman, also trying to take care of herself and then trying to take care of two children.
Mhm.
You can completely remove somebody's financial support, then you're gonna essentially paralyze them. And that's the tactic here, to try and paralyze my mom so she can't do anything and that he could just get sole custody and get away with this.
No, this is terrible. And you're going to testify and tell them exactly what's been going on.
Um, can I ask you a question? Did
Sure.
you um I had sent you a letter.
Right.
You had you read that letter about Dr. Eastive?
I had, here, let me put this on pause. Let me pause this. Okay, so these letters, though anonymous, they were sent, and it was the brothers complaining about what has been happening to them.
Right.
And you don't know who sent these letters out.
I don't.
You would think someone would investigate this based on the fact that there's two little kids involved and something's going on. And CPS should not be interviewing with the predator in the room. This is why they go to the schools and interview the child at school so no one else is around.
Right.
So they didn't do
Exactly.
their job there.
On purpose.
On Yes.
On purpose. It's crazy. It just goes to show there's clearly a connection here.
Right, right. Because in Pennsylvania, everyone has to have their child abuse clearances in order to work around kids.
Right.
And that this has got to be looked into further for you to come forward and talk about this. And what people also need to know is survivors of abuse such as this always come forward when they are adults because then they're not living with the predator.
Everyone in that, for sure, East Stroudsburg North,
Mhm.
every, everybody in the school are definitely friends with them. But what, like in terms of legal matters, yeah, this is crazy how it's just a complete blind eye.
Mhm. Mhm.
And stuff like this doesn't happen on accident. It's not just, a mistake, right? Like it's not an accident, especially with somebody who's been in, I think North probably almost 20 years or about, or maybe a little bit more, but regardless, like he's been in this school district for essentially 20 years. This is not an accident.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry this is going on. I am so sorry.
It's all right. I mean, not only you, but like I'm sure other adults are are sorry as well. Like for instance, like people that are maybe maybe in the schools that are trying to pretend to be his friend, but really they're scared, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sure they are because he could start a smear campaign.
Yeah. And I'm very, very sure it's like very easy for him because like I mean, think of it like this, like a smear campaign is probably like the minor leagues for him, right? And then going to court, molesting three kids and also trying to completely throw dirt all over his ex-wife's name is like professional, you know, like major leagues here. Like
Right.
there's levels to this. I'm sure if any of these teachers, you know, wanted to take a stand, I'm sure they're scared, you know, or
Mm-hmm.
even help support this. But like I'm sure they would also somehow get completely fired. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very
So, um, he has custody of a child that isn't even his own. And this is something I don't understand that these judges do is give custody to a step parent
sure.
when even CPS, they're supposed to be following kinship care. So even if the court, we'll just say, for instance, didn't want to give them to your mother, why not pick someone in your own family, not someone who isn't a blood relative?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not Jeff's friend, so I'm not. I couldn't come up with a creative way to come to just hand over, you know, the keys to
Mhm.
him. You know,
Do you know who was the judge? Do you remember or know who the judge was?
um, that that's handling this right now, or maybe that's been
I guess,
helping
yeah, I guess the judge who handed the kids off to him.
like a Jenna, a Jen, no, a
Jennifer.
Jennifer.
Hmm. Um, hmm.
Would you happen to be? Do you have any like last names?
Yeah. Let me see here. Let me put us on pause here. Okay, so at that time when the children were removed, that was by Judge Jennifer Sebum, Sibum. And you're thinking this is going to be the same judge coming up here on July 10th of 2024.
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, she better hear what you have to say and
Yeah,
uh, give these children back to your mother.
yeah.
And then the sad part is they're going to have intense counseling because so much hurt and abuse has been done to them.
Hmm.
And
Without a doubt.
and I just don't know. I just feel so bad because this I see this happening all the time.
Mhm. Yeah. Uh, I've, I mean, I grew up watching Law and Order a little bit, so I was always like a little doubtful, like how that it can't be that real. Like, there's no way. But growing up, like Reichel and my mom would always have conversations like in the kitchen, and my room was right next to it. So I would always overhear conversations and stuff. And like I mentioned before, him talking about it is powerful friends. And
Mm,
he's mentioned before, like people are easily persuaded either with the support of money or, you know, being friends and still providing money. And
mhm,
essentially, he's just saying people can just be bought. And I believe like
mhm.
he's probably like helped her in a campaign or some sort. And I'm sure like I'm sure they also have some sort of special like connection. Like I'm sure like somehow maybe Cybum has like a or Cbum has a kid. I'm sure Cbum's kid probably went to school in North or some sort, or maybe Reichel was a therapist outside of that for her kid. But overall, like I'm sure he's provided some sort of support.
Hmm. Well, I know there are sites you could go on to see who has donated how much to what judge's campaign. And I know some parents go digging in there to find out. Um, I'd like to have you back on again for a
Mm.
follow-up if you would like to.
Yeah, I would like to as well. So
Go
one
ahead.
thing about so July 10th, my mom has asked me to be a witness.
Hmm.
Um, so she's also told me like she had a pastor, like her personal pastor, and um when she had a her pastor come be a witness in family court, uh, she she was blown away like by the way the judge Jennifer and the lawyer Reichel, the way my mom was being spoken to as if she's little and whatnot. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's gone through like three lawyers and none of them helped her case. They've all made the case worse.
Same.
But overall, like there's just no I mean, from what the pastor's saying, it's like there's just no respect for my mom. So I don't understand how someone can be easily be mistreated just by the influence of a by a professional pedophile.
Hmm. Hmm. And that's, you know what, not to interrupt, but that's why those letters were sent anonymous because if someone were to sign those letters, then there could be a smear campaign and retaliation.
Absolutely, without a doubt. I'm sure of that. Yeah, I just wanted to add that. So we'll see how much respect I will receive on July 10th.
Well, I'll give you some tips on that when we get off the air. How about that? If anyone wants to reach you, do you want them to come through me and I can give you a message? They can come through dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com.
It's fine.
Okay. So, hey, don't jump off, Kai. Slam the Gavel podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, other platforms I don't know about. And again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you so much, Kai, Tristan, and I will have you back. Thank you.
Mind if I say something really quick?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Really quick, I wanted to apologize to my little brothers for myself not speaking up when I was younger. Um, I take accountability and I also take the blame for it for doing that now instead of sooner. I should have done it sooner, and I'm gonna do whatever I can to help Zane and Evan be removed out of my sexual abuser's house,
Hmm.
and I'm not gonna stop. And the bare minimum that should come from this is Jeff Reichel not only admits but completely um completely relinquishes like this sort of assault, this sort of retaliation on my mom too.
Hmm.
So Reichel needs he needs to come forward in terms of admitting all the sexual wrongdoing he's done to myself, my
Hmm.
little brother, and Evan, and for all the retaliation that he's been committing against my mother, Linda Rivera.
Definitely. Well, and also don't beat yourself up too badly because you were young and you were scared as well. And you just don't know when you're with an abuser what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you're speaking out now. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, absolutely. But overall, thank you for having me on your show and giving me an opportunity to get this out there.
Definitely. And I'll have you back on and don't jump off, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.